Trump deals a heavy blow to international trafficking after a joint operation between Brazil, the United States, and Bolivia uncovered a suspicious shipment that could go down in history as the largest cocaine seizure ever recorded on Brazilian soil. The Federal Revenue Service seized 8 trucks loaded with about 260 tons of wood in Corumbá, Mato Grosso do Sul, and Cáceres, Mato Grosso, on the border with Bolivia. The initial tests came back positive for cocaine, and estimates indicate that the amount of the drug could range from 20 to 50 tons hidden inside the structure of the wood. The operation came after shared intelligence and shows that when international pressure really comes down on organized crime, the trafficking machinery starts to break down. The Trump administration had already put Brazilian factions, such as PCC and Comando Vermelho, under unprecedented pressure by treating these groups as an international threat. And now, cooperation with the United States is at the center of a concrete offensive against drug trafficking. The question that remains is simple. What else was crossing the borders unnoticed? Why did this network only start to fall now? And how will the traffickers react after losing such a valuable shipment? I'll tell you all about it in a moment. If you like this kind of straightforward, no-nonsense content, consider subscribing because here we have videos like this every day. Operation Timber Shield was launched by the Federal Revenue Service on June 21, 2026, after authorities identified signs that shipments of wood were being used to transport cocaine on a large scale. The suspicion didn't come from a routine inspection. It arose from international cooperation with the participation of the United States, the National Customs of Bolivia, and Brazilian enforcement and security forces. The suspicious activity was detected on June 19, 2026, and the trucks were detained 2 days later at strategic points along the border. The cargo was distributed among 8 trucks. 4 of them remained under inspection in Corumbá, with about 130 tons of wood. Another 4 were detained in Cáceres, also with about 130 tons. The total amounts to approximately 260 tons of material. According to Brazil's Federal Revenue Service, preliminary examinations tested positive for cocaine. Technical analyses by the federal police are still ongoing to confirm the final volume of the drug, but the estimate of 20 to 50 tons already places the operation at a historic level. The way the drug was hidden shows the boldness of the criminal network. The Federal Revenue Service reported that cooperation between Brazil, the United States, and Bolivia was crucial in identifying the scheme. The traffickers lost a huge shipment in an operation that was born from international cooperation. At the same time that Washington is toughening its stance against Brazilian factions and is starting to treat these groups as a threat beyond Brazil's borders. That's when the defeat stops being just a police matter and also becomes a political one. A shipment estimated between 20 and 50 tons of cocaine represents a multi-billion-dollar loss for an international network. It also exposes how the factions use timber routes, dry borders, road transport, and formal trade to try to hide drugs. Organized crime doesn't just survive on armed men in communities. It survives on companies, documents, shipments, bank accounts, and operators who launder money to keep the machine running. This mechanism also appears in Operation Red Fox, launched by the Federal Police and the Federal Public Prosecutor's Office between June 20 and 21, 2026. The operation targeted a transnational financial and logistical structure linked to the Comando Vermelho. 4 preventive arrest warrants were executed. 2 suspects were in Suriname, were detained by local authorities, deported to Brazil, and arrested in Belém, Pará. Other suspects were arrested in Rio de Janeiro and in Tabatinga, Amazonas, a sensitive region due to its proximity to the border with Colombia and Peru. One of those arrested in Suriname is identified as a supplier and financial operator linked to the purchase of weapons for the Comando Vermelho. According to the investigation, he is believed to have moved more than 150 million reais. The federal police also arrested a woman identified as the logistics and financial operator of the scheme. The suspicion is that the group used shell companies, frontmen, split deposits, transfers through PICs, and pass-through accounts to hide the origin of the money and pay national and foreign suppliers. The federal court authorized the blocking, seizure, and freezing of assets, rights, and funds up to the limit of almost 500 million reais. The measure targets the faction's finances. It's no use arresting only the operational arm if the money keeps circulating. The asset freeze aims to cut the group's economic capacity, prevent assets from being hidden, and stop the financing of weapons, drugs, and international logistics. The political message is strong because the operation hits exactly the point that many governments avoid facing. A faction is not just a street problem, it's financial power. Crime presents itself as drug trafficking, but operates like an underground company using front businesses, transportation, bank accounts, commerce, borders, and influence. When the investigation reaches the money, the narrative changes. The criminal stops appearing just as an armed man and starts being seen as an operator of a network of dirty businesses. The involvement of Suriname in this case shows that the Comando Vermelho does not operate only in Rio de Janeiro. The faction seeks roots in the Amazon, connections outside Brazil, and international corridors to maintain the supply of weapons and drugs. The fact that suspects were found outside Brazilian territory reinforces that fighting crime requires cooperation with other nations. Without intelligence sharing, joint action, and financial pressure, the faction crosses borders while the state tries to catch up with the losses. The United States' tougher stance against PCC and Comando Vermelho serves as the backdrop for this new moment. When Washington classifies Brazilian factions as an international threat, banks, companies, financial operators, and intermediaries start facing greater risk. The sovereignty rhetoric used by sectors of Lula's government does not erase the central fact: Brazilian drug trafficking has become international. And fighting this advance requires international tools. Pretending it's just an internal issue only benefits those who profit from crime. It is in this environment that cooperation between the United States, Brazil, and Bolivia gains importance. Operation Timber Shield was not presented as an isolated action by a team on a road. The Federal Revenue Service, Federal Police, Brazilian Army, border groups, and technical forensics joined the operation to preserve the cargo, confirm the substance, and maintain the chain of custody. The drug will still undergo final analysis, but the suspicion has already exposed a dangerous route. The news also brings up another issue that weighs on Brasilia. While organized crime faces financial and international offensives, Alexandre de Moraes faces legal pressure in the United States in a lawsuit filed by Trump Media and Rumble. The companies have requested that Moraes be tried in absentia in the American courts, claiming that he did not respond within the deadline. In a case related to orders against profiles and content of Brazilians based in the United States, including Rodrigo Constantino. Rodrigo Constantino mocked the situation and questioned why Moraes didn't hire his own wife to defend him in the case. The statement had a political tone and poked at the minister's image of strength. For Moraes' critics, the case shows that Brazilian court orders, when they try to reach citizens, platforms, and speech on American soil, face a tough barrier in the United States justice system. The dispute is no longer just a legal matter and has entered the realm of freedom of expression, sovereignty, and the limits of a national decision outside Brazil. Trump Media and Rumble accuse Moraes of extraterritorial censorship and seek to have blocking orders considered void in the United States. This move is significant because it takes place on the same playing field where the Trump administration is increasing pressure on transnational factions and networks. On one side, Washington is cracking down on criminals who use money, drugs, and borders. On the other hand, American companies are facing Brazilian decisions that, according to them, violate constitutional guarantees in the United States. The case of Deolane Bezerra made the news due to the actions of the São Paulo Bar Association, which requested a writ of habeas corpus to try to transfer her to a special prison cell or grant her house arrest. Deolane is being held in preventive detention as part of an investigation into an alleged money laundering scheme linked to the PCC. The Superior Court of Justice had already denied on June 9, 2026, a request for release presented by the defense, maintaining the preventive detention as part of Operation Wernix. The investigation continues to focus on alleged money laundering linked to the PCC, and this is the point that connects the case to the bigger picture. Factions don't depend only on weapons and drugs. They need laundering, companies, operators, and seemingly legal ways to make the money circulate. Brazil reaches this moment with 3 fronts open, all at the same time. At the border with Bolivia, a load of wood could be hiding the largest cocaine seizure in the country's history. In Suriname, the federal police arrest suspects linked to financing weapons and drugs for the Red Command. In São Paulo, the Deolane case keeps the discussion about money laundering linked to the PCC alive. Each case has its own investigation, but they all reveal the same disease. Organized crime has become an international network, with money, logistics, and protection. The difference now is that the pressure has moved from words to the wallet. The shipment of wood was seized. The forensic analysis found evidence of cocaine. The court authorized the freezing of almost 500 million reais against the structure linked to the Red Command. The suspects were arrested outside Brazil and brought back. Cooperation with the United States and Bolivia helped uncover a scheme that could cross borders and reach the ports without drawing attention. Now the federal police takes over the criminal investigation of the shipment, confirms the final volume of the drugs, and deepens the search for those who financed, transported, received, and would protect this cargo. I'm Milson Alves, global internationalist, and my purpose is to keep you well informed with truthful reporting every day. The news links are in the video description. Leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and at the end, check out the comments so you can be even more engaged with the Milson Alves community.